holiday, it's just not gone away completely.
What does it mean then to be a left-brain thinker? So if you're a predominantly left-brain thinker,
Academic.
Sorry?
It's academic side.
Very academic?
Very logic and not
Yes.
particularly artistic or
Focused.
That's right. So you're grounded perhaps in systems, procedures, you take comfort from that perhaps, if you're a very left-brain thinker. Whereas if you're a very right-brain thinker, what might that mean?
You've got a good imagination.
Yes.
And you use it to formulate what you're doing.
Yes, so you're thinking laterally perhaps, creatively. So you're not going through the systems and procedures, you're making new connections about how you think things should work and could work quite well perhaps. So you're thinking creatively without reference to previous underpinning theories and principles. Right, let's take this a little bit further then. So right brain, left brain. What learning environment would you say you might be under if you're a child aged 4 to 7? What's your learning environment going to be, left brain or right brain, generally speaking?
Right.
Right brain. So why do you say right brain?
Children are very imaginative.
Yes.
well, lots of visual
Pick up,
cues.
pick up on visual cues and
Yes. So it's play,
Sponges.
painting,
Colours.
water, sand.
Yes.
So many things, and in particular the interaction with their colleagues. So it's very much sensory playing. You're learning through play. So you might really enjoy that as a child in your primary school. You then get to secondary school, aged 11 to 16. So what learning environment might we now be in? Age 11 to 16.
Left brain.
Left brain learning environment. So what is the institution, the government, trying to get you to do by the age of 16?
You're supposed to, really.
Well, they don't care about that
particularly.
particularly.
No, but that's the educational objectives, is to get you to
Could be.
balance between the two.
But the bottom line is that at age 16 or 18, you leave to do what? Get to earn. So it's all about the economy. And it's the capitalist system, because you're in a system in which you get qualifications to get jobs, to earn money, to pay taxes, to buy things. The system
So they
doesn't
tax you
work.
on what you've bought, which is what it seems
Well,
to be at the moment.
But that's the way the system works. If people aren't buying things or using services, then the whole thing collapses, doesn't it? And that's why we've got the argument economically at the moment, which we won't go into. We'll be here all day. So the government then wants you to get jobs. So the school system is very much a system in which it's based on logic. Now, how might you feel then as a right brain thinker, but in a left brain system?
Very frustrated.
Very difficult.
Right, so what might happen then once you become frustrated?
Just switch off.
Shut down.
And then what?
You don't learn anymore.
And then what?
Well, you won't get a job at the end of it.
Yeah, you have
During the school days, what labels might you get?
Well, disruptive.
Disruptive,
lazy.
Might not even be there. You might
Yeah.
Intrusive.
Yeah.
Now, if somebody's been telling you that you're thick, stupid, disruptive for 5 years, you might tend to believe it.
You get to believe it. Believe me, you get
And
to
then
believe it.
you'll never darken the doors of educational establishments again, because for the rest of your lives, possibly, you might be thinking, well, education doesn't work for me, but purely through that experience. Some people, tip of the iceberg, do go back, and they realise, hey, I can do this, and they do really well.
Yeah.
So it wasn't perhaps that they weren't intelligent, they were, but the system didn't allow them to express it perhaps. And that's the problem that we're looking at. We're looking at perhaps a system in which people have been made to believe that they're not very good at certain things. And we need to be able to, as tutors, to address, well, what do they need, and allow them to work in their own specific way perhaps, because we're all different. Looking at all our bodies, our faces, do we all look the same?
No.
No. Surely our brains then must all be different. And we'll explore perhaps that wiring in a moment. Right, let's take it a little bit further then. If you're a right brain thinker, you might be dyslexic as well. So turning the page to page 24. What proportion of the population does it say at the top of page 24 that people have dyslexia? What percentage of the population have some form of dyslexia? It's 10%, isn't it? Now, what year in the UK was dyslexia a notional treatable condition? Year. When was it starting to be mentioned, support for dyslexia? Any experience, John? Was it available?
Yeah, it was. It only just started doing it. So,
So what year was that?
So it's the early 90s,
Late 80s, early 90s. Now that must mean that if you're over the age of about 35 years old, you've never been in an environment to be assessed for dyslexia, unless perhaps you've gone back to college. So there's lots of other people out there who may have it, but they've never been formally assessed perhaps, because only in the late 80s and the early 90s was it being assessed. So lots of us around there in the world thinking we don't have it, but possibly do, but have learned to cope with it in some way. Now, have you come across these possible strains of dyslexia? Yeah. Now, as a very simplistic view, I like to see it as a wiring issue in our brains, because we've got the left brain, we've got the right brain, and then we've got tissue in between, the corpus callosum. I'll give you an example of how it may not work. Somebody on this course a couple of years ago, very dyslexic, very intelligent, and she was on her driving lesson, and a driving instructor said to her, when you come to the roundabout, could you turn right? Now that's exactly what she did, but can you see a problem with that?
She turned right and went the wrong way around.
Yeah, she went the wrong way roundabout.
Because he asked her to turn right, which is literal.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So you can see what's happening. Her right brain, understanding the instruction to turn right, but not communicating through the corpus callosum with the left brain to ask, is this logical? Should I be doing this? So she took the command literally and went right against the flow of traffic. And you may hear teachers say, I've told this person time and time again, and they don't do it. And that's because they can't.
They can't understand the instructions.
Absolutely. Well, in the way it's framed,
phrased,
their brain isn't structured to accept that command, that instruction, in the way the teacher or the parent has given it. So you've got to work in different ways. So really, it's a job for the teacher, job for us, job for you, in that you're faced with people who you think aren't getting it. So you've got to bother to try and help them get it, but in their own way. Now that takes time and trouble, and perhaps, unfortunately, many of us are busy and we don't have that time, and we can't be bothered to spend the trouble. So we label them as being stupid. It's their fault.
I've given them the information. They should know it now.
Yeah. It's their fault, isn't it?
Yes, of course it's their fault.
But how many of your teachers, if you think back to your own school days, how many of your teachers would have suggested, ever have suggested, it was perhaps their fault sometimes?
Oh, maths was always my fault. I am a bit dyscalculic.
But I don't think, I can remember any teacher would have ever even had the inkling that it might have been their fault in some way, if learners weren't learning. What else have we got? We've got, at the bottom there, strengths of dyslexics. So they think in different ways. So lots of different strengths that they might have. Now, if you look at the next page, page 25, we've got lots of lists of apparently dyslexic people in some way. Are there any surprises? Any names that surprise you?
I don't know John F. Kennedy was.
Well, that's an interesting one. He thought so radically differently, he had to be killed.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, which is true, isn't it?
Yeah.
And to this day, we don't know who was behind that killing.
No.
Somebody knows, but we don't know.
Somebody in the government probably know.
Well, that's the thing. These are all people who thought outside of the box, and they were too radical for their peers at that time. For me, Einstein was a surprise. I thought, well, he's a scientist, he must think very logically, very rationally. But the exact opposite.
His work is so irrationally set out.
Yeah.
It took a long time for. I've just been listening to the history of what is it, a short history of the world.
Right.
And there's a lot about Einstein in there and how his work was completely jumbled and he never published anything. It took ages for everybody to unravel it, but he solved a lot of problems.
But not only that, like many people here, they were completely written off at school.
Yeah.
Einstein did his work working as a clerk because the school system thought he was stupid.
Yeah.
Most of these people were completely written off at school. Winston Churchill, for example, had a very bad time at school.
Richard Branson.
Yeah.
I knew him because that's my book. It's my book of life. Losing my virginity. I go to that if I need help.
Now, what would the world look like without these people? Any different?
Yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah.
We could be hundreds of years behind where we are now, because these people have changed the world. Now, that's the problem that the school system and we personally have. If we think people are being stupid, they're not getting it, it may be that they're thinking about the problem in a different way.
Yeah.
Those are the people that create new ways of doing things in the future, as most of these people have done here. They're the ones that do change the world. People who are using policy and procedure don't make changes.
No.
They're using historical, what's there already. They're not changing things. And clearly we need people working to those principles, to those concepts, to those theories. But other people have the scope to break out of that. And most of these people have broken out of that and done things in a very different way.
So, how long has dyslexia been known?
The word was coined in the early 20th century, about 1909, I think. So you might be thinking, well, how do we have these people going back thousands of years? Well, through anecdotal evidence, their writing, their peers' comments about them. You can sort of guess that they were. Now then, we're going to take a lunch break in a moment, but on page 27 to 29, you've got the quiz. If you haven't done the quiz, it would be good if you could get that before we come back from lunch. So we'll have a lunch break now, and we'll aim for perhaps, what do you think, 1:15? What was that? Shall we see where we are at 1:15?
Okay.
So enjoy your lunch, it's all there, and we'll aim for 1:15, having completed the quiz, but we'll see where we are at 1:15. Thank you very much, enjoy your lunch.